I'm really close to my computer right now. Hey, good morning and welcome to Wake the Fuck Up Wednesday. Hey, hey. So I'm going to move this here. There we go. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Barbara Colby came on. Hello. Yeah, it's so good to see your faces. Hey. Today, I wanted to talk about kind of the what I want to say is like the overwhelm of being human right now, and how at the same time it's always kind of hard to be a human. And some tips that I have found around unplugging and nature and whatnot that help me to be present with all the shit that goes on sometimes. I love you too, Colby. Thank you. Um, So, you may remember that last week, I had talked about how I was like at such a loss with all of the screw ups that were happening on my travels. And by the way, I feel so vindicated because Alaska Airlines, didn't let me on the plane with my daughter because they said we couldn't arrive in Hawaii after 11:30, and I was like, "That's not true." And then, so anyway, it's true. It's not true. So they're trying to make it up to me, but it's like there's travel, there's wars, there's pandemics, there's all kinds of stuff going on in our lives, right? People get sick, like not just COVID, but like people get old and they get sick. People get into car accidents, right? Like hard things happen. Life happens. We get stress from due dates and projects, and we have relationship stress, right? And it can be so important for us to remember, first of all, that it is the nature of being alive and of being a human that things will change and that things aren't predictable. And I don't mean this in a like you're never safe kind of way. I'm saying that like what we define as safety, most of us, predictability, reliability, is an illusion. And when we can embrace that unpredictable stuff happens, hard things happen, right? Like the Four Noble Truths podcast that I did a while ago. When we can accept that, then we can more easily flow with these unexpected things that come up. So, while there is so much going on right now that is painful, possibly, right? Everybody interprets everything differently. Um, and if things are going well for you right now, you can use this for the future when you are feeling that everything is kind of overwhelming. We can also say, okay, hey, I have got to remember that there has always been uncertainty in life, right? There's always war going on somewhere, actually, on the planet, that don't get the airtime that some wars do. There's always like illness spreading, right? And so my perception that things are different right now um, is a perspective, right? And what if I was looking at this current situation as another example of the unpredictability of life? And what can I do to take care of myself so that I can flow with it more instead of resist it, right? Because there's this example of like, well, we can either try to pave all of the rocky roads to make it more comfortable to walk barefoot, or we could put on some shoes so that we don't have to like change everything outside, right? And so today I wanted to kind of talk about your psychological shoes that you can put on to help navigate these areas of life that can be like painful to walk sometimes, okay? Because it can be really hard to be human and contain all this space. Like I just was getting coached on this recently by my coach. And I was looking at the ocean, which if I didn't have 3 cameras, I would just turn this around and show you because it's beautiful. But I was looking at the ocean and I was like, the ocean can hold so much. It has like whales and like all of these amazing creatures, and it expands around the whole planet. And I'm not the ocean. Like, humans were not meant to hold all of the kinds of suffering that we're receiving right now, right? We get news, we get emails, we get phone calls, we get pings and notifications. And not just of bad news, but of people wanting our attention, and of people like, look at me, and I want to show you this, and come talk to me, and come help me, and all of this stuff. And it's like, we have to remember that in an evolutionary sense, our brains did, I feel like my hair's going in my mouth. Our brains evolved in a way that wasn't to hold that kind of capacity of input. It's not to say that it's not, or that it's easy, it's not easy for some people, but in general, evolutionarily, like, when we heard news, it came from like a newspaper that came out once in a while. Like, think about like 100 years ago, just 100 years ago, and how long it took for our brains to develop to deal with life the way we have right now, and how much has changed just in the last 100 years, and how slowly evolution can be, and like what our capacity is. And so here we are, you know, in the last 100 years, television, radio, internet, social media, like all of this stuff inundating us. I mean, even in my 20s, when I was a climbing guide, there were, you know, this is no cell phones. We didn't have TVs really, like in our scene, unless we went to stay at someone's house that had a TV. And it was like the way we found out. We didn't have an address to have newspapers delivered. So I would like, if I was in my car, I'd listen to NPR in the morning, and that's how I got my news. But often I wasn't in my car, and I'd be guiding for like 30 days, and I wouldn't have any news, and I would find out about news like on the trail. I'd run into someone and they'd say, hey, like I was with a group of Outward Bound students climbing a peak once, and when we got to the summit, these 2 other guys were climbing on top. They had just summited, they were getting ready to head down, and they were like, hey, did you hear about Jerry? And my students were like, what? And they're like, Jerry Garcia died, man. So here they are. They've been in the wilderness for, I think, probably like 18 days at that point. And then they get this news, and many of them were super bummed, right? But it was like, you know, they didn't find out the day it happened, but they found out. And did it change anything that they were late finding it out? No. I didn't find out about 9/11 because I was on a kayaking trip in Baja. I didn't find out about it for days. I was on the water by ourselves. It was like, and then we got off the water, and I was like, oh shit. Like, I'm stuck down here in Baja because this crazy thing has happened, and I didn't know about it. Like, it was days later, right? I remember walking through the town of La Paz and seeing this image on a television screen of a building exploding, and I thought people were watching a movie, and I was like, what movie are you watching? And they're like, are you American? Because like, this is happening. And so there was a time, y'all, when news arrived to us at a more titrated pace, and now we can receive it all, every day, all day, updates. Now we can doom scroll and search all the hard things that happen. And we do that in a way so that we can feel safe. Like, oh, if I find out all the scary things going on, I can maybe protect myself from it. But it really leads to a lot of overwhelm and a lot of stress. And like, you know, when I was talking about the ocean having so much capacity, it's like, yes, while I have so much capacity, I sometimes think I expect myself to hold as much as the ocean does. And I'm not the ocean, and that's okay. And you're not the ocean, and that's okay. And we often have a greater capacity than what we think is possible. And we can grow our capacity in amazing ways. And we are humans in a body with a brain that evolved a certain way and has a potential to evolve exponentially at faster speeds, for sure. yet we have to be compassionate for our needs. Like, we are animals in a body that have stress responses to bad news and hard news and demands and deadlines, all those stressors, right? So, what can we do in the meantime to kind of titrate this experience, right? That used to be automatically titrated for us because, 150 years ago, we didn't hear about something going on in the other side of the world until way later, right? And then we got the follow up, and then it was like, and then what? Then when do we get the next follow up, right? And so it was like we had so much time to digest, and what was more focused was like our immediate community, right? So one of the things I wanted to recommend was, I'm going to give you like a few evidence-based tips here. And I want to talk to you about the 3-day effect, right? The 3-day effect of being in nature, which is this concept I find really intriguing. So one is to do a news cleanse. I know we want to stay on top of it and seem super on top of it and be like, yes, I know about all the current events and whatnot. But we have to remember that we're human beings and we can actually just catch up on the latest. We don't need to know every single story of every single thing. I know sometimes society can have us feel like that, like, oh, if you're not super on top of it, where have you been? Like, I remember one time when I came out of the mountains, someone, like, I didn't know about the internet. Don't judge me. I flew from Nepal back to San Francisco. I saw these signs like Google and Yahoo, and I was like, wow, that's really bad advertising. Like, I have no idea what they're advertising. And then I was asking people, like, what's Yahoo and what's Google? And they're like, where have you been? Like, living under a rock? And I'm like, kind of, more like on a rock, but right. And then it was like, nothing bad happened, that I was a little behind. I was living life. I was like doing cool shit. Okay. So we can maybe feel pressure to be on top of all this, but you'll be okay. Like, I was okay. I still had friends. I was still doing fun things. People still liked me, right? Like, you're going to be okay. And so try not to check news every day. Yeah. Like, what if you just checked it once a week? Or what? And definitely don't check it first thing in the morning, right? I'm going to talk a little bit about first thing in the morning, but try not to check the news every day, all right? And don't doom scroll. Or you could even say, I'm going to take a break from the news for an entire week or 2 weeks. You will be okay. You'll find out about it some other ways if it's important enough, okay? But see what happens to your mind when you can take that kind of a news break, all right? The other thing is, and I know we've all heard this, and a lot of my people in Freedom School are doing this, but like a social media detox, right? We all know it's a good idea, but it's often actually hard to do. And our Facebook group in Freedom School is actually not that active anymore because so many people are intentionally coming off of social media. And to me, that's a good thing because I want people to feel like they're not missing out if they want to opt out of social media, right? There's other ways. We have the live coaching every week. We have ways that you can submit questions. And so there's other ways to connect to people. So you can have control here. You can start out small. You can not get on social media, or even better, like delete your social media apps for however long you like a week or a half a day. Anything is going to make a difference, right? Yeah. So someone's saying, I had no idea about Russia until a few days later, and I wasn't mad. As soon as I found out, I went into a depression panic episode. Yeah, exactly. And so we have to acknowledge that hearing these things are hard. Like my friends' little kids in elementary school, when they think about this Russo-Ukrainian war, like they're asking about World War III and stuff. And when I'm talking about news cleanses, social media detoxes, I'm not saying to be ignorant of the suffering of the world. I'm not saying to ignore it or diminish it. But what I'm saying is titrate it so that you can receive it and when you're in an aligned place and you're ready. Right? I'm going to talk about that more in a little bit, because then we actually have a more effective response and can take more effective action. So, the social media thing can be like, even as simple as I only check it during this half hour and this half hour, right? But really, I encourage you to really take a break, like a month or a week or a weekend or a day, whatever you want to start with, right? Because it'll all help. But the benefit of doing it for a longer period of time is like initially we kind of feel this FOMO. Like, what am I missing out on? What's going on that I might miss out on, right? And you can kind of get uh, tempted to check it. But then when you pass that phase, like, oh, I can pay attention to what's going on right now in front of me, where I'm at, and with who I'm hanging out, right? Then that can be a really beneficial phase to start to drop into. The other thing, stop checking email first thing in the morning. How many of you do that? I still fall into that habit sometimes. I've gotten so much better. But I put my phone into airplane mode, Wi-Fi off, so that if I have to look at the phone to turn off the alarm or something, I'm not seeing the notifications. That's the other thing, you can turn off your notifications. But I highly recommend stop checking email first thing in the morning. This has made a huge difference in my day, right? Because when we check email first thing, think about, like I did a whole episode about bookending your day and daily routines and how important that is, so that if you bookend your day with starting off being in alignment, like last week's episode of the podcast, when you start off your day and end your day and setting the tone for alignment, you can more readily handle stuff that might happen in between. And I don't know about y'all, but I have like email anxiety. Like I'm going to get bad news if I open my messages and stuff. Part of it is the unpredictability of it and just my past shit, but like also I have received some really stressful news by email where I'm just like checking my email, and then like this kind of intense news, like whether it's like frivolous lawsuits that end up going nowhere but cause a lot of stress or like just like sometimes people kind of send lawyers out onto entrepreneurs to freak them out, hoping they'll scare them into like giving them money. Then you realize, oh, this is like a scam actually. But that's stressful, right? Or like hard news just discovered via email. And it's like we don't want to set our day with opening that door for just things to enter into our space without being able to enter into it mindfully. So don't check your email first thing in the day. Alex Franzen, I took a marketing course with her called Marketing Without Social Media that was really powerful. And she said, like, just check your email later in the day. Save your morning for like self-care and, your higher level work, like content creation or whatever it is you're doing. And I was like, gosh, later in the day, what if there's an emergency? But the reality is there are no emergencies by email. Like if shit's really crazy, someone's going to call you or text you, right? They're not going to like usually send you an emergency email. They may feel like it's an emergency and be panicked and want shit handled ASAP, but that alone doesn't make it an emergency, right? So not checking email first thing in the morning, okay? That's huge. You can listen to the podcast about daily routines to get some ideas what to do instead. The other thing, turning off your ringer, right? Or like I have a kid, so I can pick I can turn off notifications, which is huge. And then I pick certain phone numbers that I will allow to ring and the rest don't. Like my kid's school, like my husband in case or if she's with another family, like their number, right? Now, the last few minutes, I wanted to tell you about the 3-day effect. You have to listen to the podcast dropping tomorrow about this, but there has been studies that show, a minimum of 3 days in nature help us to shed civilization in a way. We shed it over the first 2 days, and in the third day, we drop in to parts of our brain that don't normally have a chance to show themselves. And yes, interestingly, they lead to more creativity, more productivity, but that's not the point here. I think it's funny in Western culture how we're like, so will resting make me more productive ultimately? Because then I'll rest. Or, will meditation make me more rich? Okay, then I'll meditate. Like, it's so, yes, it does all the productivity, creativity stuff, but for this, I want you to understand that the third day helps your tasking brain, the frontal cortex, the executive functioning brain, take a rest, take a step back so that these other parts of your brain can take over and have you feel more calm and more centered and more connected, be able to take different perspectives about your life, right? Like when I was super stressed out after that fucked up whole flight thing, like going camping for 3 days soon after that just was so healing. And yeah, the first day was stressful, like packing all the stuff and like getting the food, making sure we didn't forget gear, setting everything up, and it was super hot. But it's like once you're there, it's so, so calming, right? Just to listen to the waves. And I know some of y'all love to bring in music into nature. Like my dear friend Michelle's all about that. And for me, like nature's my place to calm my mind because there's so much noise. I don't bring music into nature. For me, it's like bringing a boombox into a cathedral. But I get it. Like for a lot of people, they super dig it or whatever, and they come to nature for a different reason, not to like have silence and quiet their minds. So my friends have learned to be like, oh, is it okay if I turn on some music? Like they check in with me, and like I've learned to be more flexy about it, right? And so, but for me, like when I have full agency about it, I'm just like, no. Like I find places where there's no other noise because nature to me is so, I want to listen to the sounds around me, right? Someone's saying here, I have 2 jobs and one of them requires me to check my email all day. Yeah. Well, I would challenge that. I'd love if you could say more about that. But part of it is like, do we have to check it all day, or can we check it 3 times a day? Right? Can we check it at specific times of day for a specific amount of time? Because what's stressful is like we're opening all the time. Now, listen, one of the things is that this 3-day effect happens, but not when you're using your phone at the same time. So it really is nature and unplugging. So if camping's not your thing, at least get a place near somewhere natural and beautiful so that you can take breaks and go walk around there and experience nature, right? Oops, sorry. There we go. So I want you to pick one of those things, at least, if not all of them, and give it a go. Because I've done all of them and they super work. And I want you to plan these things regularly. Okay? I don't know why. Something's flashing here on my thing. I don't know if you can hear me, but anyway. So I want to encourage you to pick one of those things or all of those things and implement them, okay? All right? And then let me know. Go into the Rebel Buddhist Facebook group and ask me questions about how you can get support around doing this, because it's really important to help support your mind to create some simplicity and calm in your life in order to deal with the uncertainty of life, okay? All right, my friends. Bye. Ciao, ciao, yes, ciao. No more social media. Yes, it's the best. Right on. Oh, thanks, Patrice. Aloha. Bye, everyone. Thank you for coming.